Great, I've got this.
Councilwoman, how are you?
All right, welcome everyone. This is the February 6th meeting of the Common Council's Planning, Economic Development, and Land Use Committee. Council members present. Committee members present. Alfredo Ballerin, Judy Doche, Ginny Farrell, myself, Kathy Fahey. Other council members, Owusu Anani, staff, Jared Pellerin, and Brad Glass is here from the Planning Department. And the first topic of discussion will be Ordinance 41219. That's an ordinance amending Chapter 375 of the Code of City of Albany, changing the zoning classifications of 151 and 153 Grand Street from MUFS, mixed-use form-based South End, to land conservation, and amending the zoning map accordingly. So why don't we jump right into it, and Brad, if you could begin to tell us a little bit about what we're looking at here, the zone change, the request for a change.
Okay, so
Councilmember Tom Hoey is also.
I apologize. I wish there was a satellite photography so you could see the existing conditions a little bit better. But there are two parcels. You may be familiar with them. One is currently occupied by I guess they're both technically occupied by the Radix Ecological Sustainability Center. And Scott from Radix is here along with Nancy Kupiak. They're going to explain a little bit about what they're proposing to do here and what they already do here. But they obtained a grant from the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation to expand their existing facilities there. And the zoning that's currently in place is it's more about filling in the existing broken fabric of the south end where some of the urban renewal was historically developed there, kind of stitching back the neighborhoods. And it really speaks to buildings that are built up to the street, walkable neighborhoods, things of that variety. But while that works for most of the development here, this particular project is really sort of a different animal. They deal a lot with, the sun and solar and generating electricity from solar, and their buildings need to be oriented in a certain way to be conducive to that. It's really sort of an urban farm in some respects, but the appropriate category for something like that is land conservation. And I think, to be honest with you, we weren't necessarily aware of the expansion when we zoned it, and I think we just honestly missed it. Their original use was covered by a prior approval that they had been granted, so there wasn't anything about the zoning that we applied that really affected that. But in going to expand, it just the existing zoning didn't fit. So rather than going the route of issuing use variance or area variances or things that would, alter, relieve that particular development from the existing zoning regulations, we decided, just find the appropriate zoning classification for that use and apply that in this instance. So I'd like, maybe Scott to come up and talk a little bit about what you do there and what prompted, the expansion of 153.
Hey, you're both welcome to come up here. Have a seat.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Sandwich you in bread.
Please.
All right. Hello. Yeah, thank you all very much for having me in tonight. My name is Scott Kellogg. I'm the Educational Director at the Radix Ecological Sustainability Center. We're a nonprofit organization that's been operating at its current location since 2009. We run basically a demonstration site of sustainable tools and technologies that are designed to teach urban residents, with a special focus on youth in the local South End neighborhood, how to have more local access and control over food, water, waste management, energy production. Do a lot of different programs with other neighborhood organizations, including Trinity and A Village, running the South End Healthy Market, running a number of after-school education programs for high school students, maintaining and stewarding a number of gardens throughout the South End neighborhood during the summer and making that food available to residents. So, yeah, as Brad mentioned, we recently received a $422,000 grant from the DEC to build an environmental justice education classroom on the 151 parcel that you see indicated on the map. Having this classroom is going to allow us to greatly extend the range and type of programming that we're currently able to offer. We presently have a 20-foot by 60-foot solar greenhouse on the property, which serves as really the main educational feature. Both parcels put together are an acre. But it has its limitations. It's commonly hot or cold, depending on really if the sun is out, frequently moist and dirty. So not always...
No indoor plumbing.
Yeah, and no indoor plumbing.
No indoor plumbing.
Right. Which can make it not the most conducive space towards focused, in-depth learning, which complements the hands-on work that we do otherwise. So having this classroom is going to enormously improve the options for that, and having just really a climate-controlled and dry and cool space that we can work, particularly in the summer months, that will have, as Nancy mentioned, indoor plumbing and flush toilets, which are a major limitation to what we can do right now.
The kids on the business, yeah.
Yeah, we're really excited about this possibility. Yeah, and happy to answer any questions that you all have about it.
I think the biggest hurdle in the zoning was how the building has to be oriented, and not pulling the building up to the sidewalk is the...
Yeah, I mean, I think if someone were coming in to build a new apartment building, we'd want to see the building up on the corner with the front entrance and, the parking behind and so on and so forth. But this is just a totally different concept. And I think it's consistent with the historic use of the property, and it, everyone in the neighborhood seems to be supportive, so.
Yeah. And again, like Brad mentioned, just having that particular solar orientation is really key to the operations of the facility, just not only the greenhouse itself, but then the placement of just about everything else on the property needs to be placed in such a way so as to maximize its sunlight exposure, as, apart from gaining access to land. Sunlight is one of the biggest limiting factors to food production in urban environments, so it's particularly critical that we locate the classroom within the shadow of the existing greenhouse so as not to deprive potential gardening space of sunlight. And also just key for its orientation and its proximity to the greenhouse so as to facilitate learning between those two spaces.
Yeah. And what's currently on the property again?
And the 151 property, right now there's nothing but garden beds on it.
There's, 150.
And not in the footprint that this building would occupy. Yeah, they're more at the northern edge of the property.
How big is the building going to be?
20 by 40. Imagine a 2.5-car garage. It's not big. It's like a single classroom with 2 handicapped accessible bathrooms and kitchen areas so they can wash vegetables and work with the kids, and some lab tables, And they'll be able to walk between that and the greenhouse. We'll do maybe a covered walkway we're talking about, heated sidewalk. So I'm just imagining this right now.
Can we go around with questions? Jen?
I was going to make a motion. I think it's great.
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just want to say, first of all, congratulations on the grant.
Thank you.
As elected officials, we hear about the South End, right? The South End and the South End. But we see people like yourself just doing so much great work to uplift that community. I just want to say thank you so much for all that you're doing in that neighborhood.
Thank you. Thank you.
Brad, I'm kind of wondering whether there are any provisions in the land use designation that potentially create any problems for them in terms of setbacks. I see that there's almost nothing in the way of setbacks.
Land conservation is really flexible. I think the only sort of restriction is there is you can only build out 10% of the lot with buildings, and I don't think they really intend to go beyond that. So
Yes.
that would be the only.
Is that 10% per parcel, or?
Correct.
Okay.
And it's a relatively large parcel, so they may even be able to put a second building if they wanted to there.
There'll be like a shed with some of the solar panels, Judy. We don't want to put them on top of the building, so our plan was to build like a lean-to And then the panels would be put on those, so the lean-to could serve as part of the parking and an electric bicycle charging station and vehicle charging station. Or if you want to put your tractor under there or whatever you want to do. But as much permeable space and land as we can and make a very green space. That's why we're going with the solar. I think we probably will end up using gas a little bit because I don't know if the sun's going to produce enough. I know my panels are down 15% with the weather we've had with climate change. So you don't get as much sun anymore. So we're a little worried that the sun alone might not heat it enough. So we have a development team we've put together of environmental engineers and solar specialists and radiant heating people, and we're just going to get it built. So I'm very excited about it. Compared to some other projects, it's kind of small, but it's my favorite.
And Nancy, your role, can you explain to everybody what your
I've been in Albany for a long time. I started in the South End. I was a director of South End Improvement in 1980, before you were probably born. So it's good to be back in the South End again. And I was a planning director for the city's community development agency for a while. Left there in '91 and formed my own construction management company, because what I like to do is build homeless shelters. I'm good at that. And the administration at that time was directing me towards economic development, so I thought, I think I'll leave and do stuff by myself. So I've been building homeless shelters in the capital region and writing grants with groups like Radix. I usually hook up with the groups long before they have a project in mind, and we help find a site and develop it. And so that's what I've been doing for over 30 years in the private sector, other than a restaurant I owned where I met you. So I'll be the construction manager on the site.
And Scott, have you owned both properties for a while then, or?
Yeah, so they're in different ownership structures. 153 is owned by my wife and I. 151 is owned by the Radix Center. So that was because originally they still are two separate lots. We purchased 153, just my wife and I privately, and then 151 was donated to the Radix Center by Albany County, sold to us for $1 a couple years after that. So they're still legally separate parcels that we operate on.
Were those
more or less
originally
continuously.
houses on the property that were demolished, or?
It's got a long,
A gas station on the
Okay.
line.
Oh.
Yeah. Well, they've done environmentals, and we're doing additional environmentals. So it's good. I mean, we're really cleaning up, and you've cleaned up a lot there. Removed a lot of asphalt, and I don't think we're going to run into contamination. Your phase one came out pretty clean for what you did.
yeah. And we
And it's a light use. We're not going to be digging very deep in the ground either. It'll be slab, so about 6 foot down with the footings is most I'm going to do. So I don't, I think with this grant in hand, what I'm hoping to do together, we'll leverage other funds and work on something where ownership will probably revert back to Radix on both parcels, and that would be the better way to, I think we all agree to handle it, but for now it's separately deeded.
Any other questions? Tom?
Well, more of a comment. I'm aware of Scott and Radix Center, what they've done. I think it's outstanding what you're bringing to the city. I know Scott serves on the sustainability committee for the city, and I think we're in good hands with this if we let him go ahead. Thank you.
Okay, no more questions, shall we make a motion?
I'd like to make a motion.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. So this will move forward to the full council with a positive recommendation.
okay.
Oh, thank you so much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
And, let's see, public hearing. We'll have a public hearing on it as well.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll get that going.
What tokens are you up to?
You can vote on the same night you do the public hearing,
We
right?
can.
Okay. You don't have to.
And sorry, so when it goes in front of council, that will be, we need to come and make some more presentation?
I think it would, if you'd like to, that would be it's
Okay,
a great
and-
way to talk about the project.
And the date for that will be? do you know?
We'll have to let you know on
Okay.
that one.
Yeah, it would either be you come to caucus before a meeting, or you come to caucus on the day of the meeting.
Okay.
So we have,
And the next meeting is the 21st.
On Thursday, yeah.
Well, there'll be a public hearing too, so you can present at that as well.
oh, that's important. That would be
Yeah.
good for you to be on the record at the public hearing.
Okay.
And we'll let you know the
We'll
date.
work
We need a
on
10-day
getting the
notice.
out.
So
for the-
I don't
for the
know that we
hearing.
can do that. Can we do that before the next
Yeah,
council meeting?
today's the
Michelle?
6th.
Yeah,
so-
today's the 6th, so
Is there enough
10
time?
days would be the 16th. I mean, if we put it out tomorrow or Friday even,
Okay, so
it's still have time.
tentatively then it'll be the 20th. 20th is that the date? 21st.
And the hearings start at the start of our meeting, so it would be at 7 o'clock. But it's possible you could also come in and do a Q&A with council members at the caucus before that.
That's 6:30 usually.
Okay.
Exciting, okay.
All right, thank you. Congratulations.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Scott.
Yeah, thank you, Barry.
That's Brad.
All right, move to the next piece of legislation. Oh, right, we've got the,
We have an issue potentially with a quorum
for the 21st?
on the 21st.
Oh, 10 people we need.
Yeah.
So why do you say that, then?
Well, because 5 people were going to be out, 4 people were going to go to the Pine Hills thing. I'm going to be
Out of
visiting my
town?
granddaughter.
Oh,
Virginia said that she'd be checking in with everyone and that might just move it to March.
oh, for the Pine House, okay. All right, so let's move to, but that's something we'll have to pay attention to, make sure we have enough council members at that meeting. This would be ordinance 31219, an ordinance amending chapter 375 of the Code of City of Albany in relation to special flood hazard areas. And again, we'll turn to Brad for,
Yeah, so I'm kind
Explain
of
this.
carrying the torch for other people in the city who did some good work on getting our floodplain map revisions, map revised from FEMA. They updated the map, I believe it was in 2015. And one of the things that was evident on the updates is in North Albany, a lot of people would call it the warehouse district, but also areas adjacent to there. The areas around where the Patroon Creek would potentially flood, the floodplain area rapidly, significantly expanded in those areas, which could or did impact the flood insurance premiums for a lot of property owners in that area, as well as in terms of redevelopment of some of those properties, what you can and can't do on the first floor, whether it has to be flood-proofed and so on and so forth. So our water department, Bill Simcoe in particular, the deputy commissioner, worked with Schnabel Engineering, who they have on contract to do some other work related to Tivoli Preserve and the Patroon Creek, to kind of take a hard look at some of the data and provide FEMA with some of the data that they came up with. And they were successful in getting those mapped areas revised. So they ended up being quite a bit smaller, which will positively benefit a lot of those property owners with their flood insurance.
Which map is which? I assume
So
the blue
the
map is...
the blue is the before and the red would be after.
wow.
And although our ordinance is written to cover any changes in the flood maps as they occur, it specifically references the flood maps that apply to the city of Albany. The Department of, I believe, New York State DEC, again, they wanted us to specifically reference the letter of map revision that they issued in the code. So this ordinance essentially adds reference to that letter of map revision in the floodplain overlay section of our code.
okay.
So
Any questions?
could you take us through this a little? I'm trying to, so I see this single line, that single line goes down to the river?
Yeah, it would be helpful to kind of, right now I'm looking at a
So
bunch of squiggly.
there is the Patroon Creek at North Pearl Street goes into a culvert. And if for some reason, I believe the Hudson River were to back up and the Patroon Creek were to back up, it would actually jump that culvert and water would flood out into the area above ground where the Patroon Creek would ordinarily be flowing underground.
Has that, and that has occurred?
Not since, the Sacandaga Reservoir and dam was built to prevent flooding of the Hudson, so not since 1950 or 30.
I really wanted to say like the Great Flood of.
Yeah. No, you've seen the pictures, but not in some time, so we don't expect it to flood, but, FEMA is rather conservative with their estimates, and if for some reason we didn't have that system at Sacandaga, these areas could potentially flood, and I believe the hatched area and the clear area represent different sort of levels of severity.
Hatched area and the severe, okay.
AO and AE respectively, and that affects not only, the flood insurance rate.
AO and AE.
Yeah.
Are they on here, AO and
Yeah,
AE?
I couldn't tell you what the different acronyms stand
okay.
Sorry.
yeah.
Would the hatched area
The
be-
hatched
would
area, I
flood
believe,
first?
it's the floodway, so it would be a different,
And then maybe
greater
the clear
impact
area
than-
would be like, if it really got bad, it would
yeah, I
get to
believe
there?
there would be the hatched area would be the rush of water or the general inundation, and then it would also subsequently flood the additional.
I see, so that would be like, that would have a current.
Correct.
Got it. And then, so the polka dotted area on the red would be the part with the current?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Got it, okay. Because
Interesting.
the lines, the red lines and the blue lines, when you take away the polka dotted area and the hatched area, they're pretty similar. In fact,
Well,
the
this-
red goes further.
But this has quite a bit more over here, right?
Yeah, again, if you
red
look
looks
at the
like it
red
goes-
up
Yeah.
here, it almost looks
Oh, I see
like
expansion.
this
Goes
is
way further.
including more area.
Yeah. Like there's less.
Further along the highway?
It goes, the border of the red comes out quite a bit more, or no?
There's less current area, but there's more flood area.
And the funding for this project, where would it be? Is it like city, state? Or like physical applications?
The
We're looking at,
only
like,
funding would have been, the use of Schnabel engineering to, do whatever studies were required to convince FEMA that, I think FEMA draws the lines generically. They don't necessarily do a detailed study. So for this particular area, since we felt that they were incorrect, we sort of did additional study and provided that to FEMA, and they agreed to revise the boundaries.
So the bottom line is, this is all around good for the people that live there.
That's my understanding.
And
yes.
that we might not fully understand the details of these red and blue maps. But if we okay this through our committee, FEMA will accept it, and the housing, the flood insurance will go down.
Yeah, I would be happy to have Bill Simcoe, send you something more, a little detailed narrative to include with this if you feel that would be necessary.
I personally don't need
Yeah,
that,
okay.
but
I can't even figure out where this is.
Like, who's it gonna benefit? I'd like to know.
Where
I'd
is
like to
this?
thank you,
That's it's
I
the
mean-
warehouse district, Judy?
it's the warehouse district, and
So you're like headed north towards Waterville.
What area is this?
What areas?
It's
I
North
just wanna know
Albany.
beyond that's it.
I mean, we could do that. I in fact, I suggested to Kathy that Kelly Kimbrough may want to pick this up, because this is mostly all within the fourth ward.
I think-
affected.
So North Albany is.
I think it's
Is it like by North
Yeah.
Boulevard?
Yeah, all right,
Yeah,
right.
here.
It's underground here, so, you don't even know it's there.
Like this is probably
Is it by Northern Boulevard, by North Pearl
Broadway.
Street?
Pearl and Broadway.
Well, do people feel like they need more information on this before we make it?
I think the whole reason why we're doing this is just to add this into our code so that we can, FEMA basically wants to accept what the city has given them, and it benefits the North Albany
It
residents.
sounds like they already have, and they're just saying,
Yeah.
rather than doing an incorporation by reference to the old, without us actually adopting the new maps, we have to adopt the new maps. So this is one of those things where I think you got kind of got to rely on the experts, because it's kind of like,
Right.
what are we,
I mean, I don't.
what are we
I-
going to do about
Right.
this?
Okay, is there
I don't
anyone
think
who
we-
feels they need additional information?
I just want to know, so we're expanding the boundaries, and by expanding the boundaries, we're getting more protection from FEMA, which is why the rates go down for the homeowners?
We're reducing the boundaries of the areas that would, per FEMA, flood, that have the potential for flooding, which would,
Squiggly lines.
Correct.
yeah, I'm,
That's
think-
the old one.
I think
And the
that
red is the
I
new
think that what the focus is, the hatch line and the polka dots.
You know, they have like a 100-year chance of flooding in a certain area, and if you live in that area, you have to have flood insurance if you're gonna get a mortgage.
I get that, but by expanding the non-squiggly line, are we doing any damage to those residents?
You,
I don't believe so.
yeah.
Okay.
So people who are in a floodplain have to go through extra efforts in order to make sure that their property is not damaged from the flooding that would normally be expected in that. This is sort of like in New Jersey, where people, have to have their heating units, like.
Oh, above ground,
Right. It's
way
that-
above ground.
Right, so it's that kind of thing that they have to do in order to protect themselves. And then that makes them eligible for flood insurance also through FEMA, is my understanding.
Yes, and also with respect to improvements to structures, which, depending on how much improvement you're putting into the structure, you have to meet a different level of flood proofing, depending on which zone you're in. And that can either make certain portions of the building unusable, or, you have to flood-proof them, which could be costly or difficult. And here, I don't really see too many residences affected, but there are a number of small businesses that operate in this area that, it's cities around the country are dealing with this. I know Troy in particular has
And just a reminder to
number of
everybody,
areas
this
that-
has already gone through the planning board, correct?
Yes,
Correct?
it has.
For their approval.
I'm completely comfortable with it and happy to make a motion to
I'll
move it.
second it.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Look at the
Ordinance passes. Thank you.
Bring Bill with me next time.
We did get the technical terms of the squiggly
Right,
lines
yes.
and the hatch marks and the polka dots, though.
Thank you.
Close it.
No.
No, we're good.
They